Stop asking photographers what their settings are. It's annoying. You shouldn't do it. If this is you, stop. Please. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Iamtongue, and today I want to talk about camera settings. A lot of people on the Fuji's Facebook groups out there, they're always asking me about my camera settings. Hey bro, what's your camera settings? Nice shot bro, can I know your camera settings? Bro, can I please have the camera settings? I get this question at least once every time I post my photos into the group. And I oblige anyways if you think that's going to help you out, but what are you gonna do with that information? I always tell people this, that camera settings don't matter because photography is all about light and you're never going to have the exact same lighting as me to even use the settings that I've shared with you guys. Another reason is you don't know what my intentions were with that photo, why my ISO was high even though it was bright, or why my shutter speed was slower when you think it should have been faster. Do you see where I'm going with this? It all depends on your environment. And in today's video, I'm going to share with you a camera settings guide that I follow when it comes to photography. And that way, once you learn my thought process, hopefully you can apply it in your own photography. So whenever I head into a portrait shoot, I'm always looking for one interesting backdrop to place the subject in. That includes anything that catches my eye, such as something with color, something with shapes, or something with texture. And after that, I think to myself, how much available light is there for me to work with? I shoot outside a lot, so I'm usually looking to see if I have direct light or overcast or side light. Because of this is going to determine how I, set my aperture. And I'm sure by now you guys heard of the exposure triangle. If not, I'll give you a brief summary. The exposure triangle is when aperture and shutter speed and ISO make up the three sides of the exposure triangle. They work together to produce a photo that is properly exposed. If one variable changes, at least one of the others must also change to maintain the correct exposure. Now, if you can wrap your mind through this, then the rest of the stuff is going to be easy for you guys. So everything is a balance. You're going to need to figure out which one is important to keep. Let's say we were shooting outside, bright and sunny. Ask yourself these questions. Do you want bokeh in your shots, or is the backdrop interesting enough that you want to show it off? That means you must stop it down to get some depth of field. If it's sunny outside, we're going to set the ISO to the lowest possible. Let's say it's ISO 100. And if you want to shoot this wide open at like f1.4, then you're going to want to crank the shutter speed way up to compensate. And let's just say you want some depth of field in your shot. Let's say it's at f11. You have two options after. Crank up the ISO to risk introducing noise in your shot, or slow down your shutter speed and risk getting a soft image. So these are all decisions you have to make when you're out shooting, so keep that in mind. Be sure to learn more about the exposure triangle, and after you get an understanding of how that works, then here are some guidelines that you guys should follow. If you want a bokalicious portrait, shoot wide open, whether it's f0.95, f1.2, f1.4. If you find that shooting wide open is resulting you in having a soft image because the focal plane is very thin and it's harder to nail focus, you're going to want to stop down. And I recommend anywhere from f2 to f4. It would result you still getting some separation, and your shots are going to look sharper and crispier as a result of stopping it down. And if you're shooting outside and you want to show some context in your shot, you're going to want to shoot anywhere from 5.6 all the way to f11. I shoot portraits at f11 all the time and I love the look I get out of it. So the next time when you want to ask someone about their camera settings, just take a look at the photo and see if the photo has out of focus areas, bokeh, tone, or if it's all the way in focus. That way you can start to figure out on your own, and it's a great way to learn about your camera settings. So for shutter speed, this is the guideline that I follow. First off, at the bare minimum, to avoid camera shakes, if you don't have IBIS in your camera, you want to be shooting at 1 over the focal length of the lens that you're using. Remember that we are converting it to a full frame equivalent. So if you're shooting on a 35mm f1.4, it's going to be 1/50th of a shutter speed. And a 90mm f2 is going to be 1/135th of a shutter speed. But anytime I shoot portraits, I'm usually shooting anywhere from 1/160th of a second to 1/250th of a second at a bare minimum, Now, if I want to freeze some action with the model, doing some moves like twirling or jumping or anything like that, then I'm going to be shooting around 1/500th of a second. So don't take this as absolute, be fluid with this guide. Crank it up when you need to and slow it down when it's appropriate. If I'm shooting low light portraits and I don't want to shoot wide open at f1.4, let's just say I want to shoot it at f2.8. And another thing is I don't want to shoot at a higher ISO because that will introduce noise into my shot. What I would do is I'll lower my shutter speed. I know with the XS10, the XT4, the XH1, the XH2, XH2S, they all have IBIS. So it helps with the camera shake, and having a slower shutter speed will allow more light to come in. So this is where, you know, your knowledge needs to come in with knowing your cameras, knowing if your camera has IBIS, knowing if your lens has optical image stabilization. So that way you allow yourself the flexibility to even go slower than what is on the guideline up there, right? Just experiment with this on your own. It's all about balance, and you're going to have to decide which is important to you. ISO changes for me all the time, but I would like to keep it as low as possible. During the day, I would like to keep it at ISO 100, but that can change as soon as the light changes. So for daytime, I shoot anywhere from ISO 100 to 800, and for low light shots and nighttime shots, it depends on how much light is there, like the ambient lighting around, if I have a light source somewhere from like traffic lights, the street lights, any sorts of lighting, right? I shoot anywhere from ISO 800 to 3200 and sometimes even 6400 if I have to, but that all depends on how tolerable you are with having noise in your image. And with Fujifilm cameras, the noise that is introduced into the shot, it looks like film grain. So it looks a lot better than other cameras when shooting at high ISO. There you have, folks. This is the guideline that I follow whenever I'm out shooting. I hope this helps you out. Again, it's a guideline, so as the weather and the light changes, you must adapt to these changes as well. And the next time you see an image you like, instead of asking the photographer what setting it is, try to deduct it yourself. Take a look at the image. If it was a portrait shot with shallow depth of field, you know that it must be shot wide open, you know, from anywhere from f1.4 to f1.8 and so on. And another thing is, do you look at the image and see that it's sharp? You see that it's outside? Chances are they kept their ISO as low as possible. It's an interesting exercise and it's fun to do if you want to nerd out about this kind of stuff. But this is how I learned and when I first started out. And it's why I know that whenever people ask me what my settings are, they're going to forget or it's not going to matter because everything is situational and everything depends on lighting. If you find this helpful, don't forget to leave me a like and a comment. It helps the channel out. I greatly appreciate that. And while you're at it, click the subscribe button so you get to see this face for future videos, guys. This face right here. You know you want to. And don't forget to follow me on my social media at Iamtongue. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and Vero now. I'm on Vero now, guys. And that is it for me, guys. Once again, my name is Tongue, and I'll see you in the next video. I love you.